What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Sound the fantasy alarm. Gather the hashtag family in the family room. It is best ball draft day. We got Howard Bender in the house. I'm Andrew Cooper. We have a room loaded with fantasy alarm members. We may even have a couple of special guests popping in today, a couple surprise guests. But before we get to that, Howard, how are we doing, brother?
Doing real well, Coop. Excited to get this draft up and going. I actually just entered into the draft, which may have become our 12th person. So clock is ticking right now. It looks like the order is set. I'm all the way at the back end of this draft. Where are you? Smack dab in the middle, baby.
Perfect, dude. Nice. All right.
First off, thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in here. Also, hit that like and subscribe button. It's just a free way to say we appreciate what you guys do. So
yeah, awesome. It is. It's free, but it means a lot to us, man. It brings more people to the drafts, more people to the channel, more people to the family. So I really appreciate that. We got our draft order here. Draft is going to start right now. Our guy Cole Tastrophe kicking us off here. That is Rex Timotheus, longtime hanger. SF Bay Chiefs in the draft. It's his first.
I gotta make it bigger. Sorry for the old man eyes of mine. You know how it is.
SF Bay Chiefs is going to join us here. This is his first one with the family, but as you can see with the badge on there, not his first rodeo on here. We got Rocker FFC, Fatty McFats, Jay Gort. So the rest of the gang here, for the most part, is a lot of regular members, Hamburglar, CDM. But we have two special guests in the draft today. We have Iggy, a fantasy line member. He's going to join us later on. And then my guy coming on right now to talk early draft with us on paternity leave, new daddy in the house. My guy Tyler over at JWB Fantasy, the lead analyst over there. Tyler, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, man, thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be drafted on Underdog, man. I'm in Michigan, so I don't know if those who know, Underdog has been banned in Michigan since 2021 or 2022, I think. So it's been a couple years. So it's been back for 13 days. I've been drafting nonstop. I'm back in the game. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to draft.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, shout out Michigan. If you are watching this and you didn't know, Michigan is live. So Tyler's in. Hal drafted with us last week, our guy Work and Grind. So if you're not set up yet, go over to Underdog right now. Use promo code ALARM. They're doing a match right now, 50% deposit match, up to $250 in bonus, which is crazy compared to the free entry that I got when I first got in. Up to $250 in bonus if you use promo code ALARM. They'll match up to 50% of whatever you deposit. So pretty good going there. You've already made your pick, Tyler. Jamar Chase off the board. How are you feeling about it? Pretty standard stuff.
I was surprised he was there. He usually goes a bit early, so I felt like sitting there at 7. He was sitting there towards the top. It was a pretty easy click for me. Usually like to build wide receiver heavy for these drafts early, so to see Jamar Chase, who I view as a pretty locked-in top 4 wide receiver, pretty easy pick. Going to get a little more interesting, I think, here as we keep going, but easy pick to start things off.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask you another question real quick after I say what up to everybody in the chat. What up, Crockett Martin, Rex, everybody popping in. Anthony, what's up, gang? Thanks for joining us. Tyler, I did want to ask you one thing because this is something that I kind of go back and forth on myself. Do you change up your strategy very much when you're doing Underdog, a contained draft versus like a tournament draft? So for instance, what I mean by contained draft is this is just 12 of us, $5 entry, and the winner gets the money. There's no playoffs, anything like that. A tournament, like Best Ball Mania, thousands and thousands of people are in it. And, at the round 15, week 15, you advance to next round. So kind of different beast. Do you change up your strategy or do you just have a general, hey, I'm drafting best ball teams and I'm going to put up the most points?
I changed my ranks entirely actually for this. So I have a set for really trying to do the puppies, the chihuahuas, the best ball manias. And then when I saw that you invited me to this and it was contained, I was like, well, this makes things pretty easy on me. I'm easily just going to go switch up and just throw in my PPR ranks because I'm really playing for median here. I just want to beat 11 people and get some cash. So instead of trying to beat thousands upon thousands, it does shift my ranks and my strategy up a bit.
Yeah, to me, it's the same thing as, like when you're doing a cash game tournament versus a GPP tournament in DFS, right? I mean, if it's a contained draft, then you only know how you have to beat 11 people. You can kind of play it, a little bit safer. When you're playing in one of those big tournaments, obviously ownership in DFS is a big thing, and you have to deal with that here as well. but more importantly, you're also shooting for, a lot of upside here. You're looking for those players that are going to be, the game changers for you at the tail end of your draft.
Yeah, it does change the way you approach it. Rex in the chat, that's he's picking number 1 there, Cole Catastrophe. He picked Christian McCaffrey, and he doesn't like that pick. Bender, I know in years past you've branched out with your first pick. Some years you go chalk, some years you go crazy. How you feeling this year? If you're getting the one-on-one, what's your lean?
I mean, listen, I've always been a running back guy. I'm going to always be a running back guy. I don't think that we can look past Christian McCaffrey as the 1-1. He's proven time and time again that he is that guy. And, you could turn around and be like, well, he's got Elijah Mitchell there, or they're doing this. Like, how many times have we seen that now in the last couple of seasons with the 49ers? Yes, Kyle Shanahan will spell McCaffrey every so often, but, he's got that, that weapon, and he doesn't want to keep that Ferrari in the garage. So for me, he's just going to keep utilizing McCaffrey. Using other running backs or using Deebo Samuel as a running back inside even the green zone, all that's doing is it's keeping McCaffrey fresh. It's keeping him a little bit healthier. So I'm definitely, in on that.
It's so funny. Last year, Shanahan straight up said, we got to take the workload off this guy. We got to rest him. The very next week, Christian McCaffrey played 100% of the snaps, every single snap. So it's a lot easier to say than it is to do. I see a lot of nodding out of you, Tyler. You're doing CMC at 1 as well.
Yeah, I've been smashing CMC 101. I do kind of fade the running backs a little bit more in the larger tournaments just because they're a little more fragile and I'm playing for later in the season. And as the season wears on, running backs tend to get hurt. But in something like this, running backs are going to reign supreme, and CMC is just too much of an edge at the running back position for me. You just look at what he does compared to the other running backs, especially any kind of PPR, even if it wasn't PPR, with the half PPR, just catches the ball. He's on a good offense. Overall, it's just really hard for me to get in a position where I don't take CMC 101 overall. The guy's a stud. I'm going to keep drafting him until he's not.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. In this one, I did take a running back in the first round with Bijan Robinson, but in those bigger best ball tournaments, I have been skewing towards the wide receivers. For those that might be just listening at home, basically the first 2 rounds were as expected, all wide receivers and running backs. And to me, no names really jumping out like crazy. Kind of early for Ayuk. Marvin Harrison Jr. slid. I actually took him for the first time, and I very rarely do that, but it slid to the mid-second. Beyond that, pretty chalky there. Jalen Hurts and Sam Laporta going in the 3rd round. We've seen times where quarterback and tight end don't go until the 4th round. The first one's off the board. Tyler, are you typically, like that Jalen Hurts pick or the Sam Laporta pick, are those picks that you're making, or do you usually hang out a little bit?
I think in the tournaments I've been taking a little bit earlier quarterbacks, but I think in these more, it's the 12-person tournaments, I'd probably push quarterback a little bit later. Typically we've seen these like rushing quarterbacks. They're going to give you a little bit of an edge than the rest of the larger group of quarterbacks. It's kind of like the tight end position, as you know. But I think like when I put my half PPR ranks, not my tournament ranks, it really pushed the quarterbacks down considerably. It really pushed the tight end position down considerably, as I'm not as concerned, I think, with getting as much of an edge at those positions with a 12-person like just league as I am some of the larger tournaments. So I've had my tournament rankings up in Underdog for probably 2 weeks now, right? I just put my half PPR ranks in here, and that was my biggest thing that I noticed. I was like, wow, like usually I'll see those quarterbacks on my list. I'm not seeing them. Usually I'll see those tight ends on my list. I'm not seeing them. So that's something I just realized. But for me, the biggest thing is when I'm looking at these kind of drafts, clearly, it's pushing those onesie positions down a bit and really elevating the running backs and the wide receivers.
And I'm telling you now more than ever in these early drafts, and we're, it's still, to a lot of us, this isn't quote unquote early because we draft all year, we're sickos, but it's still May to the average casual gamer. Right now, I think the onesie positions, which you're referring to, quarterback and tight end, that's where the biggest advantage can be had, especially late. Later on, when all the articles, the Konami code articles and the yin and yang tight ends come out, then the sleepers start to move up and everything smooths out. Right now, I think you can get an advantage of those positions. So for me right now, I'm waiting. later on, I might move up a little bit with those. And I see Howard Bender taking one of my very, very favorite players off the board in the 4th round.
I mean, he's the cover boy of the cheat sheet for best ball. I mean, but even more so, I was talking to Matt Perino, who covers the Bills for Syracuse.com. And we had a long conversation on the Fantasy Alarm show yesterday, just regarding the drafting of Keon Coleman, utilizing Shakir, bringing in Curtis Samuel, and what kind of offense Joe Brady likes to run. And Brady loves those underneath slant routes. He loves getting the ball over to his running back as well through the air. But when you're looking at an unproven Keon Coleman, Shakir is solid. We like him, right? Good yards after the catch. Curtis Samuel, he's got the experience with Brady, but neither Shakir nor Samuel nor anybody else that you have depth-wise in the Buffalo Bills receiver room right now is anything really that special. And Perino turned around and specifically said that he does believe there is a true advantage here with Dalton Kincaid. And one of the driving forces behind the Bills doing what they were doing in the draft was because of what they want to do more with Dalton Kincaid this year. So, we talk about this all the time. The advantage that you get at tight end is if your tight end is either the number 1 or the number 2 on that targets list. Number 3, okay, good. Yeah, we like that. But if you're the second guy on the targets list and potentially even could be, competing for the first, that's where your bread and butter is. That's kind of where it is. That's why I like Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta even, and of course, Kelsey.
Yeah, buddy. Let me tell you about Dalton Kincaid, man. And the thing is, I want to go back to the point that you made on Stephon Diggs, which is that, we don't just take the targets that are vacated and assign them to one player, but we're talking about 100 receptions every year for 4 straight years. We're talking about a guy that provides 70 first downs, right? 70 first downs. That ball needs to go somewhere. Oh, Jay Gord ripping my heart out in this draft, taking Mark Andrews 1 pick before me while we're talking about guys that can be top 2 targets on the team. Ouchies. I got to make my pick right here with Keenan Allen. Boring. But my goodness, I hate drafting with fantasy line members. It really is brutal. And I'll tell you, there's an update coming out for the Fantasy Alarm Best Ball cheat sheet. We roll them out anytime, there's anything that changes, Zay Jones signing with the Cardinals, we're going to have an update, you know what I mean? But I don't know, it may or may not be out slightly after this draft because I'm tired of getting sniped by all you cowards. So go over to Fantasy Alarm. Go over to Fantasy Alarm. Get your copy of the Fantasy Alarm cheat sheet, 2024 cheat sheet. You can, if you're a member, then you get a copy of everything, so it's right there for you. Or you can just get it as a standalone product, fantasyalarm.com/bestball. It's got all these strategies. It's got my rankings, not just the linear rankings, top 240, but also a grid with the tiers, everything, so you can see what we're doing, what I'm doing. And again, I went in and made some updates, added some players, updated for some news. But the big update I made this time is I went in and I looked at some players I really like that I kind of realized we had so high in the tiers that you didn't necessarily need to draft them there. So I kind of moved some guys down slightly to where you still get them every time if you want them, but it's more comfortable to draft them. But we're trying to set this thing up, and I'm doing these drafts every day to make sure, and I'm using the rankings every day to make sure that you're comfortable with where you're getting these players and giving yourself a lot of exposure, right? So that's up now. Go to fantasyalarm.com/bestball. Speaking of exposure, Tyler, I know you do a ton of these, especially now that it's back up and running in Michigan. For you, because we've gotten some different responses on this, do you prefer to really lean into the guys you believe in, or do you sometimes say, okay, I need to diversify, or do you just do enough of these that diversification happens on its own?
I mean, I think the diversification happens on its own. The biggest thing for me is I'm diversifying the teams. That's the thing.
Don't worry about it. I got a baby.
The teams, I'm basically
was that Coop complaining about my last pick? Is that what that was? I mean, Tyler, I'm sorry. I know you've got a new baby at home, but I apologize for the crying and whining that you're hearing here on the show too.
The crying and whining on this show from me. and from all the babies around. Shout out to the babies of the world. That is actually nothing new, Tyler.
Yeah,
So don't
the
worry about
teams is what I diversify the most, right? Because I'm really interested in like stacking, playing the tournaments. I'm really interested in stacking. Personally, like week 16, I think there's a little bit of an edge there right now, but week 17 as well, like not ignoring that, I think it's pretty optimal. Is because of that, I'm really just looking at who's playing who in 16 and 17, and because I like, if I pick some guys I like, right? Let's say I'm higher on Christian Kirk. That's going to lead me to other, Jaguars I might not be in on, and then they play the Raiders, right? And like, am I in on the Raiders? No, but they play them in week 16, so I find myself taking the Raiders. And I think just because I'm looking at these different game stacks and trying to stack week 16 and 17, it really opens it up to sometimes players that I'm not as interested in, but I'm like, I want to stack these games. I want to get 2 to 3 players from each of these teams. So because of that, I diversify. So like for me, when it comes to diversification, it's really like trying to diversify the teams that I have, and naturally that's going to happen with the players. So it's a lot less. I think early rounds I might be focused on guys I like a lot more, but as the draft goes on, it's less about guys I like and more just about guys in general that I think are going to be good for the correlation deeper in the season.
Love that, dude. Week 16 is the JWV hotspot. Can you give us all your secrets? So I know you like that
Yeah.
Jaguars Raiders game. Do you have one more? I'm not going to take them all. I know people.
Yeah.
You got to follow Tyler on Twitter. Make sure you follow him at FF Tyler O over there, right? Make sure you're checking out what those guys are doing. But can you give us one more?
Yeah. So I think for me, like I really like stacking the Lions and the Bears. I think that's a big week 16 game for me. And I think it's even more important because then in week 17, the 49ers and Lions play each other as well. So like getting 49ers, and the 49ers play Miami in week 16. So just getting the Dolphins, 49ers, Bears, and Detroit, and it correlates 16 and 17. Those are games that I'm liking a lot. I also find myself with a lot of those kinds of players just where ADP is in general. So not a really big surprise there. I guess if I had to kind of pull up my list here and like say, hey, like who have I kind of taken? Let me just take a peek here. Actually, I want to look at my ownership and give you an idea of like, these are guys that I have taken in a lot of these games. Sorry, I'm pull it up. The Jaguars, Raiders, Vikings, Seahawks is another one. Big fan of the Vikings Seahawks stack in week 16. Seahawks wide receivers, I think like Lockett's one of the best values in the draft. I find myself taking a lot of JSN as well. Noah Fant really late. I know he might not be the prototypical like top 2 target on the team, but there's no competition anymore. And like, have I ever really been in on Fant? No, but like now that this competition is out the door and he got a little bit of a contract, I'm liking him late.
I think what they're doing over there is pretty obvious. I think they said to themselves, look, we have 3 stud wide receivers. We're going to extend Tyler Lockett, so we don't need, and Shane Waldron's gone, so we don't need to have a stable of 10 tight ends anymore. We're not going to do 2 tight end sets. We're going to do 1 tight end with Noah Fant, and we're going to do 3 wide receivers. I think that's what we're going to see a lot more of. So it makes sense for Will Disley and Colby Parkinson to find new homes. And that's better for fantasy football. Just 11 personnel every play. If we can't have Kyle Juszczyk out there running around mashing people up and getting no targets, the next best thing is having 11 personnel. Howard, now with these ones, there's probably less correlation at the end of the season. We don't need to go so crazy into it. But for you, have you started? I know we've got some articles out on some tough matchups or for playoffs and stuff. But for you, I know at this stage, you're still in kind of best available mode, not taking a lot of, not focusing about as much on end of season schedule in these 12 team drafts, right?
I mean, yeah, I always have a hard time. Like where I'm at in my process right now is I'm diving into the offensive schemes. I'm looking at the coaching movement that's happened, and so I'm very focused in on the beginning of the of the season. Now, does that put me at a little bit of a disadvantage drafting this early? Yeah, it might actually, because there is some scheduling and stuff that you look at later on in the season. In order to make these picks proper for yourself. So, I think, right now these drafts for me are all about just kind of gauging where everybody's taking guys, right? And doing it that way, as opposed to like really hardcore, like with my roster construction and saying, I'm going to build it this way because I know late in the season, I'm going to get this kind of a push over the final 6 games.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, again, when you draft a ton of teams like Tyler does, like we do, then you want all these different exposures. But the picking what games at the end of the year are going to be big ones and what aren't is kind of an inexact science, as we know. I mean, just in general, like we would all be sitting on a island somewhere with an umbrella in our drinks if we could just pick the overs on all these games, right? So, it's not one where you say I have to get the Chiefs because I know the Chiefs are going to be in a shootout. Last year, that game, the Chiefs game, scored like 40 points in that, in that spot, and a couple other games I was looking at. Was like the Steelers game went big. It was, it's not easy, but you do want to, lean into the offenses you think are going to be good. Those teams end up in shootouts down the stretch. Let's take a little look.
Hence me grabbing Jordan Love and Christian Watson here. My last two picks. I love me some Green Bay offense right now. I love it.
I'm fully on board, and I actually did a little correlation myself there. I have Joe Burrow ranked ahead of Kyler Murray, but if I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. for the first time, gotta give me a little Kyler Murray action there. Again, you don't want to reach too far. I use it as more of a tiebreaker than anything else. But for you, Tyler, like when it comes to the correlations, we're talking the stacks, we're talking week 16, 17. How far are you willing to reach on that? We're talking like a round, or is it more just like tiebreakers?
As the draft goes on, I'll reach more, right?
Yes.
I think one thing that I want to point out is like, as it gets to like the triple digit ADP, that's when I start to care a little less about ADP. Like ADP is a great tool, right? We need to pay attention to it. We can't ignore it. But I do think it's going to shift a lot between now and end of August. So I think if you're going to deviate from ADP, now's the time to do it. I usually don't necessarily worry about stacking as much with like my first 5 or 6 rounds. Like those are the dudes. Like those are the guys. They're going to crush no matter what. I don't really care. But I usually will take a look at like after 4, 5, 6 rounds, I'll then usually be like, okay, like what am I looking at here? Who's on my team? And then start to build my stacks for week 16 and week 17 correlation from who's already on my roster. I don't want to like go like pick round 1 and be like, all right, I drafted, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, oh, Laporte is there in round 2. I need to reach. Like, that's not exactly the direction that I go. I think I want to get the core of my team set, the guys who are the dudes who are going to score the points. And then from there, the more ancillary pieces are going to kind of guide those stacks because that's what I want to count on there. And I did want to mention one thing that you talked about. Like, I don't really look at implied totals for 6 or 16 or 17. We have no idea what's going to happen. But I do think looking at some games not that are in domes and more so games that aren't in cold weather is something that I look at more than the implied totals, right? It's not an end all be all. I use it as like a tiebreaker, but a game that's going to be in Buffalo in December, I'm a little bit more scared of that game than I would be a game that's in Florida, right? Or a game that's in a dome. So I think I'd be more apt to pay attention to the weather if I was going to pick something that to zero in on more than the implied totals in those week 16 and 17 matchups.
Well, I love that, dude. I love that because that's something that you can. Again, I've talked about it with like fantasy baseball that I hate the weather. I hate being a weatherman, trying to figure out which third baseman to start. One's playing at 1, one's playing at midnight in rainy Seattle. But in football, we know who's playing in a dome. We know who plays in Buffalo and who plays in Miami. So we can take advantage of that. And it's not you're not racking your brain trying to pull out a farmer's almanac to predict that stuff. So I do like when weather gets involved in football. So hey, Tyler, we got a guest hanging in the wings here. I want to give you a chance here. Just plug whatever you guys got going on.
I'll tell you what. Let's keep Tyler for a little bit more here. Let's bring in Iggy. You know what? I gotta focus on my draft right now. I gotta figure out where the hell I'm going at quarterback for my second guy here. So
Tyler, can you hang a little bit?
And I'm going to just kind of see myself out just for a few, man. When Tyler's done and he's got to go and the baby wakes up, then I'm back in here. But let's give Iggy and Tyler.
I'm ready to roll. Let's get going.
All right, Ben Dorino popping on the back. Iggy, what's happening, brother? Thanks for popping on. IDP Iggy, our guy over at Fantasy Alarm, does a lot of NBA stuff, but also football guru and IDP monster. So what's happening, brother? And we might have a microphone issue.
How's it?
That's working. Try one more time. I heard you for 1 second. You heard him, right, Tyler? I'm not crazy.
Briefly.
We heard you briefly. See if you can get the tech going there, finagle it a little bit. Is
this better?
That's good right there.
All right. How's it going, guys? Yeah, thankful to be a part of this draft. NBA coming to a wrap, but NFL getting in full gear. So, you got to be able to hit the ground running, so to speak. So,
yeah. Well, before we ask who wins the NBA championship wise at the Celtics.
Oh man, I think the Celtics are going to be a problem if Minnesota advances just because of the offense. You know, there's just so much offense between Indiana and Boston. I'm worried about the other two teams being able to replicate that. But Dallas does have the second most 3 attempts right after Boston. So if both of those teams get hot, we could be looking at those two in the finals.
Yeah, Luka scares me a little bit, but we're not here to talk basketball. Let's talk a little foosball. Have you, before we get into this draft, have you dug into the IDP sphere? I know we've got some maniacs on the Fantasy Alarm Discord doing IDP startup drafts right now that you've been helping them out a little bit with. But yeah, have you dug in yet? I mean, can you give us a couple sleepers, couple rookies, real quick?
I mean, you know, the typical rookies that you know of, Dallas is going to be great, I think, if Minnesota, especially if they can somehow play with the lead. If you play in a league with a lot of sacks. I'm going to butcher the kid's name from Dallas if you want to help me, the linebacker they drafted.
You too. I mean, you're better than me at that stuff. Trust me. I follow. I wait for your stuff to come out, and I follow your lead on the idea.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of right where Howard is, man. You know, I always like to look at the defensive coordinators. There's so many changes for coordinators throughout the year, not as much as the previous years. This year, some consistency, but still enough changes that you got to go and look at the philosophy. You know, a lot of teams going into a zone as opposed to a man, playing a lot more, more safeties or hybrid safeties, if you will. So once I get that all set, then I like to take off with, my IDP rankings. But I do have it all formulating, and I do rank them every year. So I'm looking forward to that as we gear away from basketball.
Good. We count on you for that. Well, since you're joining us a little late here, why don't you walk us through how you kicked off your draft here? How you started? I saw you went Puka Nacua first round, chalk. Saquon Barkley second round, chalk, and then Travis Kelce. And of course, from there, everyone branches off in different directions. So Puka, Saquon, Kelce, and then walk us through the rest of these picks here.
Yeah, I just picked up my double down, Johan Dotson to pair with Jaden Daniels with the late stack, like you talked about, Trey. Something to take advantage of whenever you get past kind of where the chalky players go. But yeah, man, I went with Travis Kelce just because I really want Sam Laporta. I'm really trying to target him a lot of times in my, third round, late second round. I think he's going to have a high volume kind of year. But I think Kelce is going to be asked to do it again. 93 receptions last year. If he can get 90 or 88 receptions from the tight end position, that's still going to be a clear advantage over most of the field. So I just like to tilt it even in this half-point PPR format. That still would be, let's just, say he gets 80 catches. That's still 40 points just off of his catches alone. I think he's still going to be a red zone threat. So I went there with Kelce. Drafting again real quick. I do see after Kelce, who did I have right there?
It's Zay Flowers. So you and Kelce, Zay Flowers, Kenneth Walker,
yeah.
Hollywood, JSN, JMO. So a lot of speed on this team, which is great in best ball because you get all those big plays and you don't have to worry about the bad ones.
Yeah, with Williams, man, they didn't, he got kind of like a nod, I guess. They didn't really bring in any wide receiver help. Khalif Raymond's possibly going to be wide receiver 3 in this offense. Same offensive coordinator, same running back, same quarterback, really good offensive line. I just think there's some potentials there for him to go off. And I don't need him to be my wide receiver 1 all the time. I have plenty of wide receivers ahead of him. But Zay Flowers, I think we're expecting to see way more catches than last year. I think he's going to have quite a productive year. If Lamar just kind of keeps playing and keep improving underneath this system, there's a potential for him to have upwards to about 100 catches this year, depending on Mark Andrews and his health throughout the year. Kenneth Walker, I really like. As you can see, I handcuffed him. That's been one of my favorite best ball strategies so far. I've probably done about 20 drafts, and I like handcuffing that backfield because even without Pete Carroll here, even with the change, they're going to need to run the ball. They're going to need to take some pressure off Geno Smith. So I think if you can handcuff that backfield, you could possibly get 15 touchdowns out of those 2 running backs, depending on how they attack the red zone, how they attack 10-yard situations.
If one of them goes down and you end up with only one, you have whoever the leftover guy is down the stretch, and you really only need one, like 2-3 running backs to crack your lineup, depending on what you have going on with tight ends and everything else. Tyler, I wanted to ask you if you do end up with, because Iggy says he likes taking Sam Laporta, he likes taking Kelce if he's there. If you do end up with one tight end, does that affect the number of tight ends you draft? Like, do you let's say you get Kelsey at a great price.
Yep.
Do you typically say to yourself, okay, I only need one more now? Or are you always open to going 3? Or does drafting Kelsey tell you, all right, I have Kelsey, so I'll just wait till the very end and then take 2, and I'll have 1 Kelsey and 2 whoever's?
Yep. I treat the tight end position and quarterback position very similarly in best ball, where if I get like, roughly a top 6 or top 8 guy, I draft 2. If I don't get one of those, I usually wait a little bit and I'll just take 3. Kind of like Frankenstein, like the tight end, kind of like Frankenstein it together. Just be like, one of these 3 dudes will catch a touchdown every week. Kind of the hope when you get those 3 out there. But if I do get a top tight end, it's always 2. I mean, it's tough because I really like the flexibility when I'm able to get like a top end quarterback and a top end tight end, because I only have to draft like one more. And when I draft just one more, it's essentially put in a position to get more running backs and wide receivers in there. So I took a different approach. Like this draft, I went pretty heavy on the running backs and wide receivers early, had some value I thought dropped me. So I probably will be looking to Frankenstein, the quarterback, and especially the tight end position in this one. But, I'm basically got to have 2, no more than 3.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, so when I do my yin and yang tight end and that whole strategy, that is a redraft specific strategy. And it applies to a lot of the concepts apply to everything. But in this particular format, it is much more forgiving of the guys that are touchdown dependent, right? Or the guys that are like the George Kittles of the world. George Kittle actually is a perfect example, because this is a guy that at any given time could break off a 60-yard play. At any given time, he could come out and have 3 receptions. And in those games, it could be 3 receptions for 20 yards. It could be 3 receptions for 3 touchdowns. Last year, he had a game with 3 receptions and 3 touchdowns, right? So a guy like that in this format is back on the table. Whereas when we do season-long leagues and redraft leagues and things like that, we really are honing in on specific types of guys. So keep that in mind out there. A guy that we're fading in redraft in this format might be back on the table if they have specific skill sets, specifically either speed or red zone prowess, right? So there are a handful of guys we just want to be completely out on, but there's going to be a number of guys that are back in. So that's where we're at on that. Iggy, for you, I find myself having a very difficult time drafting running backs in this like mid-range, the rounds like 10 to 13, like let's say 9, even 9 on. I do like Javonte Williams, who Rex Timotheus took, but round 10 to 13, I'm just not loving a ton of these guys. You look at those rounds, and for those just listening, it's like Brian Robinson Jr., Trey Benson, Tajay Spears, Austin Eckler, Zeke Elliott, Nick Chubb, Devin Singletary, Gus Edwards, Blake Corum, Chase Brown. I know you took Zach Charbonnet, but of those guys, is there something that really jumps out to you where you're like, man, I have this guy in another tier compared to the rest of these guys? Or are you just taking whoever? I find myself taking whoever. I clicked the button on Austin Eckler and I said, whatever.
I mean, Austin Eckler is not bad. I think there'll be volume there. I think there could be some trash points, which we love in fantasy, particularly best ball. And I mean, the great New England Patriot, Ezekiel Elliott, man. He's now back to a Cowboy, but he is a Patriot always. But
okay, yeah, right in my heart, dude.
I mean, are you expecting like?
Sorry, I gotta pop in. There's no Patriots propaganda allowed here on this show. There is no such thing as great, unless you want to talk about Tom Brady.
Boo!
I can't.
I'm popping Howard out. I popped Howard back out. Let's talk Patriots, dude. He's in the back.
No, I did that for Andrew specifically. But
But wait, let me just say.
Get him out of here. That stands in the back room. Go on about how the Patriots are so great.
No, I mean, well, I just think he's going to get more volume than a lot of those other names you listed off. Whether that's going to lead to production, I don't know. But I do think he can be healthy. He's familiar with this offense. He's going to be familiar with most of the terminology, and even with this change of the coordinator since he's been gone. I just think that if you're going to take somebody there, I don't mind taking that risk. I try to nail 2 running backs early and kind of get past that, no running back zone, if you will, to that spot. And then we start picking up some rookies or somebody that can have an impact later down the road.
Yeah, you point out the terminology. The terminology is huge. Having a guy, and that's why it's so important for the Patriots as an example. Alex Van Pelt comes in. He might use totally different words for the same things in his office than other people, right? So you have Jacoby Brissett come in who knows that language, right? An example was Tavon Austin came out of, I forget where he came out of in college, but his first year with the Rams, after the season, reporters were like, "What happened?" And he goes, "The playbook looked like Spanish to me." Because it was a totally different setup. I know, Tyler, shaking your head. Is that a good thing to say to the media, Tyler, after your first rookie season?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. I heard that too. I thought that was wild. That was just a wild statement.
You would say that and not to the coaches, but it's crazy that is the case. You know what I mean? And even just like some teams number the routes. Some teams call it a 5. Some teams call it a fade. Some teams call it a fly. Some teams call it a 9. It's the same pattern. So if you're not a cerebral player, then it is difficult switching teams, and that's why in the past we have seen trouble with that from guys that can't pick it up. So you have to be very careful with that, and it does help to see guys going to a spot and to have someone familiar there, right? Like for instance, when you draft Bo Nix, it's nice to have Troy Franklin who played together in college, right? So while
the shower narrative strong, the
shower narrative is strong. It's there. The breakfast correlation. So while we're talking about that, since it's still May, right? I know we all want to jump directly into August. We kind of do that on this show anyway. We start getting draft away. But rookies are fresh. Have you guys taken any rookies in this one? I've taken more than I ever take. I'm usually a rookie hater. I'm a protector of the old men. I'm like the Lorax speaking for the Adam Thielens and those guys of the world. But I took Marvin Harrison Jr. I took Ladd McConkey. I took Jalen Wright. Dude, I got the rookie favorite. You guys take any rookies in this one, Tyler?
Yeah, I got Corum. I got Lloyd. I also got Neighbors and Brian Thomas. I didn't really consider like I was taking 4 rookies at the time, but I just kind of like had my ranks like where they were being taken and decided to go for it. And it doesn't necessarily matter as much for the format, but like taking rookies, I think is just a good bet because we know there's that kind of late season breakout, and a lot of times in the tournaments you really want to see the late season breakout. Like that's when the money's there. So I think in general it's like maybe I don't necessarily. I think I looked at it like this, like okay, like Corum's good to have, but maybe breaks out later. Maybe Lloyd breaks out later. I got some of the more vets in there as well. Same thing with I got like Lockett's and Hopkins. Like maybe they start to break down, and like Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors are able to kind of find their own like halfway through the season. Kind of like a fun little narrative there. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm not necessarily targeting rookies, but I'm also not passing them up. I kind of just throw them in with the vets and don't think twice.
That's the secret. The secret is to have the rankings, man. If you here's my advice. Get 2 screens and get a set of rankings you trust, because it allows you to look into the matrix and to make those next level decisions instead of making the panic picks and going crazy. Then like you do when you just don't have anything in front of you, you can guide yourself by having rankings and having the queue. And then within that, you can say, okay, here are my tiers. Where are my where are my correlations? Right? Once you're in the tiers, it's so much easier to say, wow, I already drafted Kyler Murray, so I can go with this guy. And we actually offer that. If you go to fantasyalarm.com/bestball, we have a best ball guide out right now. And within that, I have linear rankings and tiered rankings. And you can actually download the Excel straight from that, or just DM me in the, on Twitter, on the Discord. I'll send you it. I use it for every draft. I pull it up, make a copy, and just draft off that. And it makes your life so much easier. So go over to fantasyalarm.com/bestball. Get that draft guide now. It will be updated today, and it'll be updated all summer long. Let's go, baby. I'm getting fired up. Iggy, you fired up, dude?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely fired up, man. I'm at a best ball a day right now. It keeps everything away. So especially with my Nuggets losing, I'm full tilt football right now just to get over the pain. And I'm always this way. I'm always one of the first people ready to best ball. We get to the point, like you said, the linear draft and then the tiered rankings, but you'll get to a point if you're a best ball junkie like us 3, where we're going to be drafting in August. And we're going to just know like, okay, this person should be available at this point. You'll just get to there. But what helps is that guide. Go get that guide, have the rankings so you have the visual reference until you get it, ingrained into your head. And that'll help a lot.
Yeah, it really is. It's huge. And again, for your regular drafts, that's the biggest thing. You mentioned the cheat code is when you do these drafts, you don't have to do one every day, but even just one a week. Like we do these every Wednesday live. You can join us if you're a Fantasy Alarm member, or if you get the best ball guide, we add you into the Discord and get you in these drafts. And then by the time your draft comes, you've done so many of these that, especially when you do a live draft with your buddies, it's the best because you see your one buddy who's just been working overtime shifts, and he's looking around and he doesn't know how to pronounce anybody's name, right? And he drafts, he drafts Tyrone Tracy, even though he got picked 2 rounds earlier. Somebody already took him. Like, it's a beautiful thing to be that plugged in. But I digress. For this particular draft, we're wrapping things up with last picks here. I actually have an article coming out today, either today or tomorrow. I'm putting the finishing touches on it after the show with my recommendations for how to approach last round picks and even some guys to take. But Iggy, I'll go to you first on this one. When it comes to last round picks, there's different approaches. Some people are rounding out their roster. Some people have specific guys where they say, in the last round, I'm taking this guy every single time. How are you looking at it at this time of year?
I mean, like I said, myself personally, I'm usually getting Laporta or Kelsey after my draft. So
no. Oh, sorry. Let me. I didn't let you get to your point. Go on.
No, yeah, and I was just saying, like, I usually end up getting a tight end, rounding out my roster due to that. There are some, I think, potential wide receivers that could go off that aren't being drafted at this moment. There's always rookies that could, we haven't even really got to a good training camp yet. There's a rookie that could just fit the scheme really well, fit the offense really well, and, make a big jump. There's always the second-year player. I like to remind people, second-year players, keep them on your radar. These wide receivers that didn't get a lot of opportunities, but, are a year into the system, still growing, physically and mentally as well. I think second-year players have a big jump if they're in the right system. So, those are people I'll be targeting as well. But right now, I'm pretty much rounding out my roster with me just going basically one tight end in the first 3 picks and then waiting to the very end to grab another.
Dude, I love drafting tight ends late, and Tyler, I know what your strategy is. It's to take my guy with your last pick. I'm so shook. I am so.
Bro, he's the starter there. Could be second in targets, right?
I can't believe you just did that, dude. Because I had him circled. I had stars. I was drawing hearts in my notebook around Greg Dulcich's name, to the point where I didn't even know who. Like, I just panicked, took Waller. I already have 2 tight ends, so I can do something like that. Don't take Waller if you only have, if you're going to only have 2 tight ends. So, but man, Dulcich, dude, talk to me some Dulcich, because I'm in, and I see you taking him there. That makes me double. Because
I mean, he's one of my favorite tight ends to take late. I think we've kind of written him off. Like, he was a good prospect, and he was in a bad situation, and he was hurt. And I think it's just one of those, like, bets that I'll make at the price where I think he's better than the price indicates. I kind of also look around to see, like, who's could take anything from him. Like, the running backs, I don't have a lot of interest there. Like, Sutton, I think, sure, like, Sutton's the guy there. But, like, after that, I don't necessarily have any Broncos where I'm here for. And am I a big Bo Nix guy? No, but like, is he good enough to get the ball to Dulcich? Like, certainly. So he's definitely been a guy, and I really like him too, because if you're really hurting on quarterback, you can just tap Bo Nix, Dulcich, close out 17-18, and just have some nice little correlation there. And like, do I think that Dulcich and Bo Nix are going to light the world on fire? Like, absolutely not. But at the same time, you're getting them in the last 2 rounds. For me, it's been an easy click. If I'm going to pinch at quarterback and I'm going to pinch at tight end, 1-2, close it out. Nix, Dulcich, feels good.
They don't have to light the world on fire, right? Because you have Trevor Lawrence, right? You have Baker Mayfield. Like, you're basically just looking for guys that can, it's like in best ball, Bo Nix throws 2 touchdown passes. 1 goes to Greg Dulcich. They're both cracking your lineup, right? So it's a beautiful thing. Here's something I like to do at the end of these ones, especially when we draft with really sharp gamers, which, most of these guys in these drafts have done a ton of these with us. Shout out SF Bay Chiefs, who's joining us for the first time for these ones, but he's got the badge next to his name on there, so he's no slouch either. I like to go through and pick a team besides my own that looks most like a team I would draft, right? So, for instance, when I go through these ones, Howard Bender once again managed to snipe a ton of my favorite players. Dude, I like Jahmyr Gibbs in the first. I love A.J. Brown and T. Higgins, especially in half PPR, because they're big dogs that make big chunk play catches. I obviously already cried about Dalton Kincaid earlier on air. Anyone that's just joining us late, you can go back and listen to a lot of crying from me and from Tyler's baby on the stream. And then he took the stab on Christian Watson, which is I love that pick. I could talk forever about that one. And but I want to ask you guys, and Iggy, you're a Packers fan, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts before we get to that then? What are your thoughts on this Packers wide receiver room in terms of like if you had to rank them in terms of targets? Watson, Dubs, Reed, Wicks, Melton, Malik Heath, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. I mean, they've got a ton of talent over there. Who do you think though, if you had to rank them in terms of most targets to least, how would you go?
Most targets.
It's a loaded question, but
Think it might be Reed. I think Matt LaFleur is such a great play caller, play designer. He's going to figure out more ways to get Reed the ball. You know, they started rushing with him there at the end. So if you're looking at just receptions, he might be pretty close to Dobbs in my opinion. But I think as far as like overall usage and including rushing and how he's going to be designed for, I think I'd like Reed more than Wicks or Watson or Dobbs. You know, but I think the trick is to get Jordan Love because then you're essentially getting all those touchdowns, even in 4 point per, you know, in regular leagues, not best ball. I think he's going to have an outstanding year. You know, the Vikings are basically in a rebuild year. Chicago perpetually in a rebuild year. Lions are going to be good. They have a supposedly tough schedule, but you're talking about 4 games against, you know, what will be teams led by rookie quarterbacks. You know, a lot more offensive possessions if possibly for the Green Bay Packers in those games. Something to keep in mind.
I love it, man. That's the thing is you don't have to play the guessing game with the Packers or with the Texans if you do go and draft one of those. You know, just draft the quarterbacks, right? But I prefer taking the guessing game with the Packers because you look at it and it's like Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell all go essentially before a single Packers wide receiver. You're just getting it's easier access to a stab. The floor is not as good, but who cares about floor? It's best ball. We're going to do another draft next week. Before I jumped in there with the Watson question, I was asking which of these other teams beyond your own looks most like one you would draft. What about you, Tyler? When you look around here, is there another team where you're like, you know what? If that was my team, I could live with it. I could jive with it.
I probably should have prepared for this one.
I gave you so much time, dude. I gave
you really
you
did.
crazy-
You really
I
did.
talked for a while during the question to give you time. Then I pivoted to
I'll go with
I'm giving you additional time right now.
I'll go Rocker FCC. Really love to start with Tyreek and Debo. You're getting a good get a good tight end, get a good quarterback in Lamar, and then continue to hammer wide receivers for a couple rounds and just kind of do more of a zero RB approach there. There's a couple later picks. I don't know if I would have gone that direction. Like I guess like grabbing Fields after they have McCarthy, but I think the way that Rocker FCC started it feels pretty good to me. I mentioned that my tight ends and quarterbacks are a little I would say lower on my list in these kind of drafts where it's just the 12 of us, but like kind of in general, when I look at stuff like that, I like getting those onesie positions kind of taken care of so I can worry about them later. So I'll give it to Rocker.
Dude, that's the beautiful thing of these though, is because I've looked at a gazillion of these boards and I've loved, there's teams I've loved, but there's never once been a time where I didn't go through a team and say, I wouldn't have made that. I would have picked somebody different. And if you want to come in, like, people watch these drafts, they see me making picks. They see me making picks that I say I don't even like on the show. If you want to draft with us and you think you can beat us, go and get a Fantasy Alarm All-Pro membership. It's 40% off for the year. You get in the Discord. You hang out with us. Look at that. QR code right on the screen. Bender behind the scenes pulling strings and bells and whistles back there. Hit that QR code. And there's also a link in the description. You can get set up, do these drafts with us, ask us questions every day. And we also have, for people that join, people that win, we have little badges and stuff in the draft. So, Rex Timotheus and these guys, they get the crowns and the trophies next to their names. So go get set up over there. And we're doing a special thing just for this year. If you do buy the Fantasy Alarm Best Ball Guide, fantasyalarm.com/bestball, we get you into the Discord Best Ball chat. So usually it's for only full-time members. And again, only full-time members will get Iggy's MBA and MMA, MMA and all that stuff. But if you want to get into just the best ball for this, if you buy the draft guide, we get you in on that. Just shoot me a DM and we'll get you set up. So Iggy, I'm going to ask you, you've now had ample time yourself to find another team you like. We're going to ask you, and then we'll pull Bender back in here and make him give praise to another member of this draft. But Iggy, which team beyond yours are you feeling?
It's hard not to love mine, of course. But CD82, I found real similar to what they did. Went with Breece Hall first. I think Breece Hall is going to have a great year if you can get him. You don't have to worry about the running back. I feel like you have one running back for the entire year at least covered. Then he went 3 wide receiver, which I love. London, Metcalf, Diggs, all 3 in theory wide receiver ones. Big-bodied receivers could get touchdowns as well. Then he went James Cook. I don't know, but that's okay. Then Calvin Ridley. Then he did something which I love doing. He got like a triple threat or a triple down, if you will, on Jake Ferguson, Dak Prescott. I was planning on taking Dak Prescott. Right, he went 2 before me, stole him from me, and then he came back with Ezekiel Elliott. So covering a lot of touchdowns from everybody not named CeeDee Lamb, essentially on that offense, and I like that. And then ended, Chase Brown, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. Yeah, only thing I like, picks are picks. The one thing I would disagree with is the likely pick at the end. I think that's one too many tight ends. I don't know how much playtime he'll get. And then maybe one quarterback, Geno Smith or Matthew Stafford, not 3. Whenever you have only 18 people on your roster, you need to try to cover, I believe, the running back or the wide receiver position, which we know will have injuries. Unfortunately, that's just part of the game. 100% injury rate. So other than that, though, I love it. I love the strategy of getting the running back early. I would have pretty much drafted a lot of those picks and a lot of that style myself.
Yeah, I keep looking at the Cowboys and I'm like, okay, they didn't do much this offseason, right? But what leads us to believe they're going to throw the ball less? I mean, what have they done this offseason to allow them to not throw the ball a zillion times and throw it a zillion times to CeeDee Lamb? And I don't even love Jake Ferguson, but if they're going to do nothing and lose Michael Gallup, and it's going to be Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert and Ferguson, I just don't see why. And no Pollard now. I don't see why he wouldn't get a bunch of targets. So I still don't love drafting him, but I don't hate it. He falls into the squarely in the category of don't hate it, right, Tom?
Yeah. I mean, I am a closeted. I'm a Lions fan, but like I am a closeted Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
I've always loved Romo.
Well, Thanksgiving Day truce.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, thing is, I've always loved their players. I always been drafting their players.
Get out of here. We're going to pull you back in a second.
And I think Cooks is one of my favorites this year. I think they're going to throw the hell out of the ball, probably top 3, top 5, in pass rate. Lamb's going to completely get his. I'm not convinced that this running back room is even settled right now. Like, frankly, it's pretty bad. And I'm with you where Jake Ferguson, all the respect to this dude, gets so excited every first down he gets. Love that for him. But like he's pretty mid. I'm here for the Cooks. I'm here, obviously I'm here for the Lamb, but I do love Brandon Cooks in drafts. He's one of my favorite ways to stack Dak, because stacking the CD with Dak is you basically have to have a top 2 pick.
Yeah, it's great because he still has the speed. He's still, I mean, is he even 30 yet? I think he just recently turned 30, right? Like he's got all that. And you get all the good games. He's gonna have the big game. He's gonna have the hamstring down game. He's gonna have the social media crybaby game. But you don't have to worry about those games because this is best ball. You don't have to set a lineup. So you get all the good games and not all the bad games. And Brandon Cooks could have a bounce back here. Yeah, speaking of bouncing, what's that?
Do you have any Tolbert shares? I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you.
So I did take him in one. I took him in a draft on another platform that goes to like 20 something rounds, but I've yet to find a way to get him into a draft on Underdog. But I got to, man. I also, in a very deep draft, I took one Kevontae Turpin share because I'm outside of my mind. I think that was like almost 30 rounds that draft, but I was like, hey, you know what? It got to the point of the draft where I was like, all right, who's the fastest dude? Kevontae Turpin. There you go. But yeah, speaking of bounce backs, let's bounce Mr. Bender back in here. There he is, our fearless leader. I'll be joining Howard Bender for a few shows coming up tomorrow, Friday, and Monday. Jim Bowden taking a Memorial Day weekend, so 6 to 8 p.m. on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM, and we're going to be doing a little draft tomorrow on there, right, Howard?
I'm going to be doing it on Friday. Actually.
Oh, Friday, yeah. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Why am I thinking? So I'm on Thursday and Friday. I'm not on tomorrow.
You're on Thursday, Friday, and Monday. Actually, you get
Thursday,
to play
Friday,
next week too. So we're gonna have a little fun there. I'm gonna try and get a best ball draft going in there Friday afternoon. We're psyched about it. Listen, I was all set to start praising Tyler's team, and then he just started with that Cowboys nonsense. Right? Like you just should have stuck with the Lions and eating kneecaps and beating children, whatever it is that we got to deal with there with Dan Campbell. But then you started like sliding in that friendly Cowboys talk. But no, I mean seriously,
even while Jim's on vacation, somebody has to bring the Cowboys.
I'm sorry, I know, like when I got before the show, Coop was telling me to bring up the Cowboys, so I had
to Coop, are those bus tracks on your back? I think you just got thrown under.
No, he's actually saying the truth 100%.
But I do like Tyler's build here, especially in a consolidated, contained draft here where it's just us. And I like the, going after just the guys that, are going to perform. Jamar Chase, 100%. Devon Achan, listen, I know that there's Mostert. I know they brought in Jalen Wright, but, this is still going to, I see Achan, as long as he stays healthy, being the lead running back and having the other two guys kind of spell him in that front. So I like that. Malik Neighbors, he's probably the only one who can catch a pass over in New York. So, while Daniel Jones might throw 72 interceptions, he's still going to be only throwing to Malik Neighbors. I'm a huge Pacheco fan. I think that's a great move. Rachaad White's going to be interesting for me because I'm very curious to see how this offense performs. We know what Dave Canales did with him last year. And I know that they're looking to kind of maintain, because they've maintained the personnel from year to year. They're looking to try and maintain that semblance of a system as well, which puts Rachaad White there. And then you're looking at, like a bunch of great, half point PPR guys, Godwin, Hopkins, and Lockett. We'll see what Brian Thomas's role is over there. But, again, I think it's a worthwhile risk to do that. You paired him up with Trevor Lawrence. Blake Corum is to get him here in the 11th round, knowing that Kyron Williams is going to miss OTAs and he's going to miss a lot of this offseason program. His ADP is going to shoot down. Blake Corum's is going to jump up significantly. So I like grabbing him here down in the 11th, even though Kyron went, earlier on in this draft. And then the late round picks. I mean, again, he's got that Tampa Bay offense working there with Baker and Otten. And we go from there. Okonkwo, I will criticize only because they brought, I loved Okonkwo last year because he was like the number 2 guy catching passes there. You bring in Ridley, you've still got Treylon Burks and Hopkins both there. You bring in a pass catching running back like Tony Pollard. I think Okonkwo still gets, his work, but I'm not as bullish on him as I once was. But other than that, I'm going to go with Tyler's team here as the second best team to the RotoBuzz Guy Squad.
Unbelievable. I mean, I will give we will give Tyler this point of credit, is that at least he has that 4-5 speed. So if he's gonna crack your lineup, it'll be with those chunk plays. But yeah, the true path to top 2 target might not be there, but the chunk plays might be able to help.
I just need 3 weeks of Chig, right? That's all. That's all I'm looking for.
Basically.
Like last year, if they just connected, there were 2 flea flickers that were just completely overthrown. That was one flea flicker cracks your lineup. So all right, Tyler, thank you for popping in for a quick 15 minutes that turned into 55 minutes. Appreciate
the baby fell asleep, man. So I was like, you know what? She fell asleep on me. I don't have to jump out of here right now. This is my first pod. The baby was born in February. This is my first pod. I took some time off, not just from work, but from doing the fantasy stuff. So first pod since February. It's good to be back talking ball. It also coincides with Underdog being back in Michigan. So took a little time off from the fantasy stuff. Thrilled to be back. Thrilled to be here on the show with you. First time, hopefully not the last.
Didn't miss a beat, man. Not rusty in the least bit, dude. Came out gunning, dude. So people out there, obviously after this draft, hearing what you had to say, want to know where they can find your stuff. So why don't you let them know what you got going on then?
For sure. Do all my content at JWB Fantasy Football. Lead analyst over there. Been at rocking those guys for a while. Pretty much do all the fantasy football stuff under the sun here. Just added some Devy stuff. Always heavy on the best ball, dynasty, and redraft content. Best ball's rolling. I'm actually jumping on a best ball show tonight, drafting with Wyatt's. Dynasty's rolling. Redraft's going to be kicking off here in the next month or so. So JWB YouTube, that's where you're going to find most of our stuff. You can find me on Twitter at FFTylerO.
All right, and make sure you get over there because those guys are awesome, dude. Except Wyatt and except Perry, but everybody else I love at JWB, dude. Those guys are great. Iggy, we got our hooks in you over at Fantasy Alarm, but tell us what you got going on, man. What you got popping? Yeah, and tell us what we can bet on for the games tonight for basketball, real quick.
Yeah, today I took an underdog. I took the Mavericks to come in and win. I just think emotional win for the Timberwolves, and they're not really prepared for the backcourt of Kyrie and Luka. I don't think. A lot of scoring, the second most threes. Also got a same game parlay. Luka over 28.5 points, over 4 threes made. and our 4+ threes made, and Rudy Gobert over our 13+ rebounds. So that came in at plus 450. Yeah, you can find me IDP_Iggy. You can find my work at Fantasy Alarm. I am going to plug my charity league real quick. Fantasy Football Sevens will be dropping after Memorial Weekend. Got the videos in works. It benefits Kawasaki's disease, makes awareness for that. Have the video explaining that. It's a worldwide IDP tournament, so come join it.
Let's go, dude. All right. For me, I got updated rankings in the best ball guide. Get a copy now, please. It's going to be updated all year. It's the easiest way to access my tight end rankings and everything else right now. And it's the best way to support us. You know what I mean? You go out, spend $25 to support your best good friends here on the internet, and you get into all these drafts. You get all the rankings. They're updated all year. You get all my targets. You get all that information, and it's huge for us. It's huge for the show. So go to fantasyalarm.com/bestball. And Bender, last but not least, we kind of already let everybody know what's going on with the show, but let us know what's popping now. And
I got nothing going on, man.
You got to have more than going on than anybody else.
I don't do anything. I don't write. I don't pod. Let's see. Fantasy Alarm show Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern with Jim Bowden. Coop will be our special co-host for Thursday, Friday, and Monday's show. So we got a lot of stuff going on there. Everything over at fantasyalarm.com. Everything from Underdog Pick'em contest picks for basketball, for football, for PGA. We got everything covered over there. The team is just absolutely killing it. I'm actually going to be doing a lot of the MLB best bets over there at Fantasy Alarm. I'm probably going to be, taking a little bit of a step back as we get our fantasy football draft guide, getting that up and running and make sure we have all that out for everybody out there as well. And if I can urge you once again, this Fantasy Alarm best ball cheat sheet created by Andrew Cooper with his boyfriend, Dalton Kincaid, right there on the cover. Go ahead, jump in on that, and then get in on these drafts. We do them every Wednesday, like Coop said. You don't want to miss out.
Right. Buy some cheat sheets, or my daughter Lainey's going to be wearing newspapers on her shoes to school. You know what I mean? We're going to be eating cat food over here. So get a cheat sheet. Let's go. It's how we feed our families. But that's it for us. We are out of here. Thank you, everybody that came in the chat. Thank you, all the members that join us every week for these. Shout out SF Bay Chiefs for his first draft with us. Shout out to our guests. And thank you, everybody on Twitch and YouTube. Please like and subscribe. But that is it for us. I'll be back on Friday with Mr. Heath Cummings to break down some